Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigilant Network show. My name is Emma Vigilant, and you know what to do, folks. Subscribe, youtube.com/ESVN show. Put on push notifications. Rate us 5 stars on Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening to this. Comment below, say hello, and say hello to Bradley Alsop over there.
That was a nice little rhyme.
Unintentional, but I went with it. Went with the flow here. So people may notice something odd about my sweater. I made the mistake of wearing green in front of our green screen, and I thought that this was almost like a pistachio, and I'd be able to get away with it. But I'm sort of blending into the background, so if my body disappears, don't worry, you're not tripping. It's just because of the green screen and, you know, the incredible amount of technology and money that we're working with here at the Majority Report. All that Soros funds helping us out.
Emma wanted to test the green screen's might.
I did. And right now, I mean, it's holding up. I just look like I'm wearing a really ugly color. It's super gray, but I swear to you guys, it's green. You can check out the show today. And to be honest with you, this would be a better excuse if I had put this on this morning and had been like, and I hadn't remembered that I was doing ESPN today. But it's new. I got it as a part of a Black Friday deal, and I wanted to wear it. And so I consciously made this decision, so I have no one to blame but myself.
You're thrifty.
I am thrifty. Or I'm just, I don't know, impulsive. I could have waited to wear this tomorrow, but I wanted this sweater today. And that's where we are at. Folks, in the NFL season, we are coming down to the wire. And honestly, maybe this year more than most, and I think we talked about this, with the level of parity that we're seeing in the league, it's been shocking how quickly I think the bad teams have separated themselves from the good teams. Like, you don't necessarily always see this. Maybe what we're seeing now, like with the Vikings, is, perhaps they're better than we thought they were. But there's few middling teams. And if they are middling, like the Dolphins, for example, it's because we know that Tua was out for 4 weeks and they're playing better now, as we'll get into with the Jets. But
it seems like some of them that that might be in that vein, maybe outside of, obviously, we'll get to it with the Rams, but with a team, I would say maybe like the Bengals or the Dolphins, it seems like the potential for a resurgence is maybe just too late.
Right.
I think you're right about the kind of like vanishing like middle class of teams, because I feel like sort of there's like the kind of like 2-9-ish, 3-8-ish, or however many weeks there is now in the season. Relative to like, there's not a ton of, I feel like, kind of like 500 completely like sort of like in the hunt sort of teams that inspire a lot of like, they could make a run despite their record. It kind of does seem like, in terms of like the cream of the crop that we've been discussing, are sort of like, I think it's somewhat indicative that we've usually been saying what are like our top 4 teams, basically, like 2 from the AFC and 2 from the NFC. Before we've even like actually kind of solidified the playoff bracket.
Right. It's just there's 4 weeks left, and it already feels like, all right, let's fast forward to the postseason.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And maybe I'm also feeling that way in part because my team is so bad, as is yours. But I do think
what
that, like,
specifically,
there are, I would say, 2 dominant teams in the NFC. There are the Eagles and there are the Lions. And then in the AFC, that list is getting a little shorter too. Like, do we leapfrog the Steelers and the Bills in that situation? The Steelers look pretty damn good. Let's start here. Let's start with the game of yesterday. Rams defeating the Bills in a shootout.
It was so crazy.
In LA.
86 points on the board.
Whew. This is the first game in NFL history where both teams scored over 40 points and none of them turned the ball over. First game in the history of the NFL with that stat line. And no team in NFL history has, prior to this, won a game allowing 6 touchdowns and 0 turnovers until the Rams were able to pull it off, because on the other side of the ball on offense, they were just tearing it up themselves, as I just mentioned, because both teams had that stat line. It was 0-245 in the Super Bowl era. teams were when they allowed an opponent to score 6 touchdowns with 0 turnovers against them. And now it's 1 in 245 because the Bills won at home against, the Rams won at home against the Bills. Puka Nacua just tearing it up, 12 catches for 162 yards. He also rushed and had 2 touchdowns. And the Rams just destroyed on third down. I just felt like every time they were in a third down situation, I'd see Matthew Stafford just rifle one in. They were 11 for 15 on third down against the Bills. It's their highest conversion rate since they played the Colts in 2001. The Bills have an issue on defense, but first let's just talk about how amazing Stafford and Puka Nacua are in particular. And the offensive line for the Rams finally healthy again. I feel like that's a big reason why they were able to pull this off.
Well, I think it partially, I think, reshifts my focus, not necessarily of who I think is probably going to win the NFC West. It sort of kind of reallocates who I might want to see win the NFC West, just because I just feel like when there's really no other better watch, honestly, for like when a team is kind of actually has its full complement of talent and people in their roles than like the McVay Stafford Rams offense. Like this is sort of what we've been missing a lot of for a good majority of games this year because of the lack of health on the offensive line, as well as Kupp and Nacua missing multiple games. But like this is exactly sort of what you want to see from this particular offense. I mean, the obvious concern is still giving up 42 points, in terms of on defense, but
it's also Josh Allen and the Bills, and when he has to respond, he almost always does. And also
that this was sort of one of those game scripts where I think because the run game was not really getting going, it was, it's no small feat that Allen had 3 rushing and 3 passing touchdowns for a total of 6. But I think, as you're saying, he was really in do-it-yourself mode and gave them every single possible thing that he had. I think it's as much as I think as you're saying, it's not as if it's the most outlandish thing to surrender that to a Josh Allen performance like that. But I think to get the win in spite of it is still quite impressive that you could kind of bend and not break in that situation, and come out 7-6 was still a fighting chance to remain in the playoff picture, whereas it seemed a lot more of a dimmer prospect, I think, a few weeks ago. Yeah, I think it was probably Brady who was saying it, who had the raspiest voice yesterday. Holy God, was it difficult to listen to him yesterday. But he's like, that's a great throw. He's like, that's a great throw, Kevin. No, it was like I could hear the spit gargling in his throat. It was, he already has a difficult, high-pitched speaking voice. He just yells. Yeah. It's so loud. I mean, we didn't even get into his Daniel Jones take about how Daniel Jones should have just been happy playing scout safety for the Giants, as if he would have done the same thing. He threatened to leave New England when they drafted Jimmy G. Okay. I hate his mythological building up of himself, but I mean, Rodgers is doing the same thing. That trailer is nuts. But shit, what was I talking about? I'm getting off track. About what were you talking about? Whoa! Brady was saying this. Yes, about Stafford. Yes. Stafford loves when an elite quarterback comes to town and he gets to show out against him, because he's always felt, I think, forgotten. This is now me editorializing, but like Matthew Stafford should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, and he doesn't get talked about in that same way. He was amazing yesterday. He's so clutch. He puts his vision and the way he's able to pick apart, particularly like a zone defense, which is, I think, what exposed some things for the Bills. He just has this immense, he has both guts and he also has all the knowledge that you could need to be able to see every defense. And when Kupp and Nacua are healthy and they can run the ball a little with Kyren Williams, it's almost like you can't stop him. And I think, we've obviously seen this a number of times, but since last season, obviously, it's always been impressive, just the sort of stature and composition of a guy like Nacua, who is this young to play to play the way he does. But it just goes to show you that when those guys are healthy, they are so complementary to one another, because for kind of like a pinpoint in a number of ways for a guy like Stafford who can make these like very improbable pinpoint accurate throws. Nakua's ability at the catch point, as well as his route running prowess, combined with also if he's not even the one getting the ball, just how and Kupp can also kind of slot into this description as well, having those traits while also being ready and willing blockers on screen in the screen game, so that if they're dumping something out to Kyron Williams or Jordan Whittington or guys like that, they are just already completely on the move, ready to give really, really, tough dugout blocks for their guys to get way more yards than you would necessarily anticipate on some of these screens.
Right.
But basically, I bring all of that up because I was just thinking about that particular sideline throw on the left side to Nakua from Stafford was both an incredible throw and an incredible catch because, to keep both feet in bounds, Nakua had like an inch of space to work with.
Yeah.
So like that type of like high point catch, as well as like being able to make sure that your feet are in bounds.
It was incredible.
It's just like a unbelievable athletic feat to behold.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
The Bills defense, like they surrendered, I think, over 450 yards. They have a defensive head coach. The problem is this is what we were saying, which is emerging now, which is that they don't have a ton of talent on defense. Matt Milano being back is helpful. Greg Rousseau can get after the passer on occasion. Von Miller, whatever, like hopefully he performs more in the playoffs. But I just do think that and I'm not even sure if Von Miller is back, right? So I'm not sure what his stat line was. We'll see. Okay, so he was suspended 4 games. I didn't notice him, which like probably says enough. But the Bills have an issue playing man to man, and when you have 2 great receivers like that, and a receiver and a quarterback who has seen every defense, it's a struggle. And then when the Rams blocked that punt, and then they went up by 10, 17-7. The defense couldn't stop Stafford, so the only thing was can Josh Allen match him? And he almost did. I mean, to be able to drive at the end of that game and get a touchdown the way that they did, and the Rams only won by 2, it speaks to how much the rest of the team has consistently let Josh Allen down throughout his career. And I just hope at the very least he gets his MVP, because I have concerns about that defense going forward and if it's championship caliber. And
I think I sort of understand to the extent of why they had the game plan that they did, even I think when they went down 17-7, because I think they sort of saw what was happening, which is we're sort of already running into a buzzsaw offensively to begin with. We've just sort of muffed a special teams touchdown, which we kind of had no room for error to begin with. We definitely couldn't really afford to give up that score. Therefore, if our run game with James Cook or kind of that type, if there's no change of pace to begin with, we have to just keep pace the one way that we can, which is with our phenom quarterback doing everything. And the thing is, as we've discussed many times, he can do everything. It's just more a matter of should he do everything?
Right.
I mean, it was extraordinary to watch. Every rush, every incredible throw. That Mac Hollins touchdown, the throw and catch was unbelievable. It's obviously a complete fireworks show to watch this. I just think obviously the defensive errors combined with a special team error leads to a different kind of game plan where you really have to put every single sort of ounce of effort and ounce of gameplay onto Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, point is, it's just he can win. They can win in the regular season like this. They've proven that. Can you win championship football by putting this much on your quarterback? I don't think you can. Right. And that's the issue with the Bills right now, and it's rearing its ugly head once again. So the other big game of the day was the Vikings defeating the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are talented, but they still have issues on defense, and the Vikings are the quietest 11-2 that I have ever seen. The Bills play the Lions next week. Coming off a loss, the Lions could be sleeping a little bit, although I doubt it. Either way, this division, despite the Lions having 1 loss on the year, is not in hand. They do have one loss on the year, right? They do. They do. I just want to make sure that that's the case.
Oh, the Lions, yeah.
Yes, yeah. The Lions are 12-1. So yes, that's exactly right. The Vikings have now won 6 straight. The Falcons did not bounce back from that insane Chargers loss, where they were outplayed, and that would have been a moment where, you would say, like, okay, maybe we reevaluate some things. And I guess to start the game, they did bounce back. Like, Kirk played a much better game to start this Falcons Vikings game than he had against the Chargers, where it was like one of the worst games of his career, if not the worst game. But the Falcons just like couldn't stop the passing attack of the Vikings, and Justin Jefferson finally got out of his drought situation, and he had 2 touchdowns, and Jordan Addison was all over the field. And gotta give credit to Sam Darnold, who just slings it back there, and he has such great athleticism in the pocket where it allows him to extend things and make good decisions. And it's not just him running the offense and him having the superior brain, which, I think that was a big part of Kirk's game before he started to have a weakened throwing motion. I think in part due to his Achilles, there's just not the same zip on the ball. And he starts forcing things, and then he threw a pair of interceptions. He almost threw a pick 6 to Andrew Van Ginkel at the very end of that game. And it's not just that he's throwing interceptions. Like, a lot of these interceptions are almost turnover-worthy plays are really bad. And it's almost a bit of a, like, low-key Deshaun Watson situation down in Atlanta, because that contract is so significant that you have to wonder if ownership is forcing the situation and if the players really want Penix. But the fact is that the Falcons were 6-3. It looked like they had the NFC South in the palm of their hands. The Buccaneers were the biggest threat to them, and they had swept them. So now they are in danger of losing the division, which is crazy. And if they keep trotting Kirk Cousins out there and he keeps turning the ball over, I think that's likely, and the Bucs could take it from them.
Yeah, and it's a tough situation too. If, like, you would think maybe the only way this would happen is if it would be a close shave, with the Bucs maybe performing a little bit better and they're having it going to the tiebreaker. But if they just keep losing like this, it's just going to be wins and losses that make it so that the Bucs take over the division and the Falcons just keep falling. Like, it's not even as if they're not going to be able to keep it close if this keeps happening. It's kind of the worst time to have this type of swoon, given how the season has gone for them.
And even with that Judon trade, they are still struggling to rush the passer.
It's still almost non-existent.
And it allowed, like, Darnold to palm that ball, and I think this was the third quarter, when Justin Jefferson got past the defense, and I think in maybe one of the safeties, it was Simmons or I think, falling down, almost trying to turn around to catch him. He was just waving for a million years because Darnold had the time, and he
could just stand there and then walk into the end zone, basically.
Yeah, he did it like a backwards, basically, jog into the end zone. So, like, Kevin O'Connell is my coach of the year. And Sam Darnold hopefully gets a rich contract to start somewhere else next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think even with a few missteps, I think he's more than proved himself that in a class of starters where, like, honestly, there's a number of guys that I would not take over him.
Yeah.
That have seen,
I'd take Sam Darnold over Aaron Rodgers.
I mean,
this season, every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is crazy.
Which is funny to say, but
he's only 27 years old. He's a good athlete, and those intermediate throws, when he can put a zip and make a quick decision. We said this about him. If he's in a groove, it's good because he throws his interceptions with the same level of confidence as he throws his strike passes. But if you can give him time and he's able to, like, see the field more clearly, I think that he can really tear you up. It's just about if he's pressured or if there's confusion. And
and also I think as you've been mentioning, Kevin O'Connell, I think, really puts him in the exact right circumstances, game in and game out, to kind of mitigate any of that kind of duress that might kind of affect him. And when he has time to maneuver and time to operate, you see that talent, the arm talent and the athleticism really shine through. And I definitely think he's more than earned whatever, comes his way next season as a starter, even if necessarily maybe, I mean, I struggle to think that the Vikings would be really competitive just knowing JJ McCarthy is coming back. But any team, I think, who really kind of needs that type of quarterback contract, that type of quarterback, as a kind of low, like high floor, decently high ceiling type of guy would be. I think it would be. You could do a lot worse than Sam Darnold
Absolutely.
for that type of role. And frankly, as we were just saying with the Jets, but also a number of other teams, I would say in the league too, teams are doing worse. You know what I mean?
They are. And how much of that can you credit to Kevin O'Connell? I think a lot.
Absolutely, 100%.
But they've been going through this slump since Christian Darrisaw went out for the rest of the year with that injury. And I think that the fact that he did so well with against a team that has trouble rushing the passer, it makes sense. It makes sense. And so they were able to protect him. He threw 5 touchdown passes. Kirk threw 2 interceptions. It probably should have been more. And were you surprised that they booed him a little bit going into the stadium?
Not really, only because I just sometimes feel like almost recently, by design, fans just boo
because they don't want to look like a soft fan base.
Yeah, I almost think it's more of that than any like actual animosity, because I feel like I've seen that both in the NBA and NFL. Like, it seems even in seemingly amicable departures, there's booing, just I think to be like, to establish some baseline level of animosity going into the game. But I wasn't too surprised. I can't imagine there's a ton of bad blood, with Kirk. I really don't think so.
But it is, Kirk is the kind of guy where he's good enough for you to have regular season success, but then he's been not the greatest in the postseason. And so it's almost like, would you rather have a developmental quarterback who ends up being bad and sets you up for another, I don't know. I'm just saying, like Kirk almost, he's made so much money.
I think that's the problem, though. I think that's what it is like, I think it's harder to accept when it's sort of like you think, A, he's not enough to get you over the hump, but B, as a result of that, you almost start to question whether the contract is now an albatross, basically.
Right. Like he is one of the richest basically players currently in the NFL, and he's never gotten past the divisional round.
Right. Exactly.
He's 1-4 in the postseason.
Like if I were a Vikings fan, I could understand a level of frustration for that very reason of sort of keeping a team in good team purgatory, sort of like being competitive enough, but not enough to make a deep run into the playoffs that anyone actually thinks is
But that's his legacy in Washington.
Yes,
his legacy,
exactly.
More success in Minnesota, but still to a lesser extent. And then what are we looking at here in Atlanta? Right. And it's just the kind of question of, seems like the nicest guy ever. You can understand why some fan bases have issues with him as a player. But this is the Darnold's performance in this game. I saw this written, this statistic, that he is the first Vikings quarterback to have 300 yards and 5 touchdowns in 20 years. And the last to do that was Dante Culpepper in 2004. The Lions and the Vikings schedules, just to note, because the Lions don't have this division wrapped up, despite being the best team in football by many metrics. The Lions played the Bills, Bears, 49ers, and then the Vikings is the final game of the year. The Vikings play the Bears, Seahawks, Packers, and Lions. I would give the edge to the Lions in that situation because they're a game ahead. The Bills look more beatable than you would have thought. The Bears, we'll get to that in a bit. The 49ers, they could beat them. And then they face up head-to-head with the Vikings. The Bears, Seahawks, and then the Packers for the Vikings.
The Packers, I think, is probably the hardest
yes.
matchup of those slates, in my view.
Yeah.
Just because, there's a chance the Lions could beat up on the Bears. Mm-hmm. There's a chance the Lions could beat up on the Niners with how much attrition is going on both sides of the ball. And the Bills, obviously, I think would be a more competitive matchup, to be sure, but I also could see the Lions run game picking apart the kind of, undermanned and somewhat maybe shell-shocked defense from the Bills.
Yeah.
And then the head-to-head matchup. The Vikings-Packers one, I think, that's probably the one I'm circling, though, just because that's not going to... Clearly, as the Packers showed in their game against the Lions on Thursday, that is not by no means an easy divisional matchup. That's like, they're going to fight. That's going to be
I can't
a fight till the
remember
end.
a division this strong. And I mean, and we've talked, maybe we said the same thing about the AFC North last year, like with the Bengals and the Chargers. I mean, sorry,
Bengals,
the Bengals and the Ravens,
Browns,
and the Steelers and the Browns. But I think this is stronger than that, even, with the Bears falling apart and being what they are.
Because
like,
even
the
with
top three teams are
totally
good.
And even with the Lions being kind of the story, as you said, like quietly the Vikings are 11-2.
Yeah.
Like they have literally only lost 2 games. And yet I think we sort of see the Lions in this much more dominating presence and persona, which I think completely makes sense.
And one of their losses was to the Lions, and it was a 2-point loss.
And same, and then sometimes with that conversation, almost sometimes shrouds the Packers, who I think are as competitive, if not more so, in some respects than the Vikings relative to the Lions, given how close that game just was.
And they had to deal with a quarterback injury.
Right.
I mean, not just J.J. McCarthy, but throughout the year, right?
And scheming around that, in ways that were actually very successful. I think in the sense, it goes to show there's a bit of ingenuity and a bit of real kind of unique game approach from all three of these very good teams, which I think that's I think what makes it so fun to watch these games, is because you can tell these guys in terms of game plan and scheme and strategy are operating at a really, really high level.
Absolutely. And Matt LaFleur is no exception. What's fascinating is that next week, Sunday Night Football, is Seahawks Packers in Seattle. That is an enormous game.
Right, it'll actually have a lot of implications for both teams.
Because as we'll talk about right now, the Seahawks have swept the Arizona Cardinals and basically removed them from playoff contention single-handedly, because they're not getting in the wild card with that record and with the head-to-heads. And the Seahawks now have basically a 3-game lead effectively against the Cardinals, because they could have identical records, but they have the tiebreaker officially because they've swept the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are done. I think the 49ers, for all intents and purposes, are done. And now it's Rams versus Hawks for this division. And if Seattle wins against the Packers next week, that gives them a huge advantage because they could have a tiebreaker for the wild card.
Right.
Where they could still lose the division to the Rams and get into the playoffs if they're able to beat the Packers next week.
Right. It would be huge, as you're saying, that so it's not as if the division is the only route for them to get in.
Exactly.
They have to keep at it. Instead, they can. There's a little bit less pressure on the remaining games. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think I was listening today. I think Week 18 is Rams Seahawks.
It is. There's 2 Week 18s that could have enormous divisional implications.
Totally.
The one we just talked about with the Lions and the Vikings playing each other Week 18, and then the same thing with Seahawks and Rams.
Right. So if I'm the Seahawks, I definitely it would be huge to win that Green Bay game, to not be okay, literally our entire season comes down to playing the Rams and beating them to get into the postseason.
Right.
But I thought credit to the Seahawks. I mean, as we've said before, when really activated and kind of locked and loaded, the Cardinals on offense is a really explosive unit, both through the air and on the ground. And although the personnel is obviously wanting, just because this is kind of a rebuilding unit still, the Cardinals defense plays with a lot of intensity and a lot of energy. So they're not usually a slouching unit. So this is another great game for the Seahawks to win. I feel like they were actually showing a little bit more variety in their offensive approach too, that it wasn't just, get an empty, drop back, have Geno throw 40 yards downfield. They were employing a little bit of motion. The offensive line, I think, was doing a little bit more than they usually have this season. Zach Charbonnet had a great game in relief of Kenneth Walker.
Oh, yeah.
And these moves on defense that I think that they've made, and both I think in terms of development of guys from last year and the year before, as well as some midseason acquisitions, have really seemingly been paying off. I mean, I feel like Devin Witherspoon is really playing some of his best football of his young career, and underratedly, this acquisition of Ernest Jones to kind of shore up their linebacking core has been.
Is it D'Ernest or is it Ernest?
I think D'Ernest is the running back.
D'Ernest Johnson. Oh my God! All right, here, keep going. And this is what happens. These names get jumbled.
Yeah, there's. I mean, that's tough. Ernest and D'Ernest. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I threw you off.
Problem.
Keep going.
Ernest Jones. I've just been super impressed because that was kind of a weak spot for the defense, like the spine of the Hawks defense, and he came in the middle of the season has just really shored it up. So
and Leonard Williams is having a career resurgent year again. This whole season feels like a troll against the Giants, but I thought,
and the Jets for that matter.
Well, but like Saquon, Leonard Williams. Xavier McKinney is having like a career year in Green Bay.
That's right.
Like, I mean, it's been atrocious. But I think you're right. Like, I also just want to say that this Seahawks defense, I feel like they're finally absorbing Mike Macdonald's scheme.
Yes, exactly.
And they got healthy at the right time with Leonard Williams on their defensive line. So like they're getting a little bit more pressure, and now. They moved, I think, Bryant to safety. He had an interception. Devon Witherspoon is showing out.
Totally.
And they turned Kyler Murray over on back-to-back possessions, 2 back-to-back interceptions, which just like changed the game for the Seahawks.
And it's interesting you say that because I think, and it's funny because I think last year or the year before when the Ravens had the really almost like historically great defensive year, it didn't start out that way. I think literally I credit to Mike Macdonald and sort of his kind of impact on a team is that it might take a little bit to implement, but once it is, and it also goes to show you that he has been successful at like a measured implementation twice.
Right.
That like even if it takes a little to kind of get his vision in focus, once it is an ethos that you see on the field. That like you can see the kind of the effects and the emphases and like the focus from what he is like scheming out on the field when it actually is like you see it in motion. You're like that is a Mike Macdonald defense, which is an impressive thing for a young head coach to be able to do now, because that's what you can see in coaches like, you know, with like of like how a Vic Fangio defense looks or Steve Spagnuolo defense looks.
Right.
Like you can tell what those markers are.
Yeah.
So it's very cool to see this late in the season that like he's still adding more of that, and the offense seems to have a little bit more to it than just Gino, go get us a big chunk play.
Ryan Grubb is also helping out his head coach by playing mistake-free football. Like on the other side, you have Kyler Murray throwing interceptions. I don't know when the last time Geno Smith has thrown an interception. Which
again for a lot that they do put on his plate, and the chances he takes, the risks he takes with some of his deep balls. It's very impressive for him to really be a low turnover quarterback.
He was also sacked 0 times in this game, and Jackson Smith and Jigba emerged as like having a great game, including you said Charbonnet, but like DK Metcalf I think has not had the best year, but also reportedly struggles against the Cardinals. I'm not a Seahawks fan, but I had read that maybe just they have his number. It's an interdivisional thing, so they needed JSN to step up, and he did. It's
kind of funny. The tough thing about DK is like, he's sort of one of those. He's sort of a big-bodied receiver who doesn't sometimes use his body the way you would think he could, like the way Jamar Chase does, in the sense of like Jamar Chase has a similar, if not superior catch point ability than DK. But the other difference is he also is willing to like put people in the ground when he's running. I don't know if DK loves football that much. That's like that's an old school like get off my lawn thing to say, but it doesn't feel like it. I mean, of those Ole Miss guys, we know who's the better one now. Oh, of course, A.J. Brown, yeah.
But it was not necessarily the case in the early years at Tennessee. DK Metcalf had a stronger start to his career. A.J. Brown is obviously the superior player. And funnily enough, I would say too is like A.J. Brown. While you know it was almost the opposite. I would say in that Brown was more of a short area but very strong receiver who became an X receiver but still maintained that toughness. I feel like the toughness aspect is sort of waned for DK, but then for JSN, who's like a smaller bodied guy, JSN's willing to kind of do everything required of him to be in that role. So I feel like it's nice that Gino has that guy to rely on outside of DK, and also outside of Tyler Lockett, who obviously had a great career, but you know is
getting closer towards the end of his career than a guy like JSN is.
Yep. And really, just to say, like, the Rams can win out and they can still win this division because their final four opponents, the 49ers, Jets, and the Cardinals, are not the best compared to the Seahawks having to play the Packers, the Vikings, and then the Rams again.
Right. That is a tough schedule.
Yeah.
For the Hawks, yeah.
I mean, who's their next? Oh, wait. I said that the Packers are their next opponent. But I am curious, like, what the order is. Hold on 1 second. So I'm pulling up the schedule here. Okay, so they play the Packers, Vikings, and then Bears. That's the one I had that I missed. And then they end the season with the Rams. So Packers, Vikings are the best teams on that schedule for either team, and the Seahawks have to play both of them. So again, that's why this Packers game is so important. If they beat the Packers, I think they basically guarantee themselves a playoff spot because, like, as of right now, it appears as though there are 2 wild card spots already taken up by the Vikings and the Packers, unless the Packers kind of fall on their face at the end of this year. But, like, for all intents and purposes, 1 wild card spot in the NFC is up for grabs. And what team will that be? Right now, the Buccaneers have taken control of the division. Like, they are ahead by a game because the Falcons are 6-7. Even if they were to have identical records, the Falcons swept them. It's the most bizarre set of circumstances. But, like, then there's the Commanders, right?
That's what I was just going to mention as I was curious when you were thinking about Washington, because I guess also
I'd forgotten because they were on bye.
Because Washington also still, they have to play Philly, which I think will actually, which obviously because of how well Philly's been playing, probably won't mean as much to Philly, but that's almost kind of like a must win for Washington for the wild card, especially if Seattle wins in Green Bay. The Commanders definitely have to win that game.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, actually. But the Commanders do have the Saints next week, which should be easy one, especially because Derek Carr is going to be out and they can't win without him. Then they play the Eagles, then the Falcons, then the Cowboys. So the Commanders could feasibly go 3-1 and still make the playoffs, even if they lose to the Eagles. Yeah. But we'll see. I mean, like, the Eagles are showing signs and cracks a little bit in that game. Although I mean, AJ Brown seemed somewhat disgruntled despite the victory. I mean, our conversation just took us there, so let's just go. Even though I don't have too many thoughts on that game, except to say that Bryce Young outplayed Jalen Hurts? ?
He's honestly
good for him.
And it's such a tragedy that Leggett couldn't bring that ball down, because that really would have been such an unbelievable turn of events.
But he had a beautiful play from his own end zone where he got out of,
and I was like, unbelievable.
Okay, so I had written him off.
Same.
I'd totally written him off. Good job, Dave Canales. He's empowered his quarterback. And do I think he's ever going to be a top 10 quarterback? No. I've told you how I feel about his stature. But I do think he can have success in this league, and I'm happy to see it.
And I think with it's interesting because I think the stuff that you were we were either seeing or sort of what scouts how scouts were evaluating him
with his processing
out of Alabama in terms of processing, in terms of field vision. Obviously, when he can see over the guy's field vision, and out of structure creativity. For the first 2 seasons of his career, you didn't see any of that.
No.
That's what was so baffling is I remember him at school, and I also remember what scouts were saying about him, which is those things. Extremely quick processing ability, sees the field well when he has that line of sight, and his ability to break, contain, and make plays out of structure happen. And we've seen all of that kind of come together when we haven't really in the last probably 20-ish games of his career over the past 3 weeks. And that play from his own end zone to Thielen is no exception. I mean, he jukes a defender to avoid a safety and steps up and rockets that throw. It's like, that's a remarkable play.
It really was, and I was just so happy to see him make it because I just think Canales has given him some confidence. And he says, you have options. Like, don't feel like a robot. That's been, I think, for a rookie that's trying so hard to do everything right, when you have a coach that maybe is a little bit more new school than what he had previously with Frank Reich. I almost said Frank Luntz.
With Frank Luntz.
with noted GOP pollster Frank Luntz.
With perennial head coach Frank Luntz.
Okay. No, but don't confuse me. Frank Reich. I confused myself. Frank Reich, right?
Frank Luntz is like,
Stop it.
Frank Luntz is like, the crosstabs showed us winning this game.
Okay. Wait, Frank Reich. Being so old school, maybe that's what Canales was able to just like, hey, if you're, don't giving him more improvisational awareness and empowerment.
One kind of interesting thing about Reich as a coach is that both in Indianapolis and Carolina, he left those teams with their offensive lines, despite very little roster turnover, in like complete ruins. And then the second he's out of there, both of those lines become like significantly improved units.
But I think, and I would have to do a deeper dive into this. I do think like he is why he's an old school player where he wants you to stand in the pocket, pat the ball, take a hit. Like maybe there's something to it where these more new school guys have more motion, and they like
it like helps. They're not putting every guy just basically on an island to fight for themselves, as opposed to
exactly and more options in the run blocking game or pass protection game. I need more information to be able to make that assessment, but that's what it feels like to me.
But and credit to these guys on the Panthers, because honestly, I think the line there has looked very, very good, and I think Young and the guys on the line are cohering much more than they have been the year before and the year before that. And but this it was a close game, but the Eagles obviously had enough and to take this one over the finish line.
Congrats to Saquon Barkley setting the rushing record for the franchise within the first year of him being there. Yeah,
pretty good. Pretty good. But yeah, it's interesting though, because I definitely, even though I was very impressed with a number of things that I saw from the Panthers, I certainly wasn't expecting this game to be this close when it comes to the Eagles, based on how they've been playing, and how they played against the Ravens as an example. And I wasn't expecting to see at least what I would register as a little bit of disgruntlement from. It seemed like there was a pretty animated conversation between A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith going on, and then at the end of the game, A.J. Brown kind of made a comment being like, there's something
with the passing.
Yeah, there's something missing in the passing game, right?
But he didn't say passing game.
Right, he said with the passing, which seems somewhat pointed to not say game, because usually I think the game you would probably think, okay, that involves everyone. Right?
Well, okay, A.J. Brown. I really like A.J. Brown. You guys are winning. Like a lot of winning.
Yes, right.
No need to say anything.
To like gripe and kind of like have sour grapes while you're 11-2 or 11 or whatever the record may be.
But do I have my concerns about Jalen Hurts as a passer? Oh yeah, I do.
Yes.
And I've been we were getting yelled at for saying he's not top 5 2 years ago. So this has been an issue with him throughout his whole career. He's not an elite passer. He's not a power thrower. He's a phenomenal athlete who is smart and coachable and can read defenses, and he can get out and make the plays that he needs to. And he's like Russell Wilson before him, who was a player who wasn't, I would say, like running the offense like Patrick Mahomes or like Joe Burrow or like Lamar Jackson or whatever. Can throw a beautiful like touch deep ball too. Like there are some throws where it looks really nice. He puts an arc underneath it. The moon ball, we'll get to talking about Russell Wilson, his resurgence as well. But he's not a machine in the passing game. And so I thought that comment was a little odd by A.J. Brown. They won the game. And the Panthers, their record's bad, but like they've been improving steadily over the recent weeks. And
No, it's especially these last few games. They're very clearly not nearly as easy of an out as they were like weeks 1 through 7, for example.
But I will say, Jalen Carter has arrived. He's all over the field.
Oh yeah, he's a monster.
He's
a freaking beast.
And you see him, he stands out. He's one of those defensive players where you see that guy, you're like, whoa, that's a big guy.
And he is lightning quick for his size.
Yeah.
Like he is in the backfield in like a half a second to break up runs sometimes.
He is on his way to
awesome.
Being, arguably the best defensive tackle. One of the
like he's I think very quickly getting up there with like, Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams, Dexter Lawrence, like easy.
Oh yeah, easy. So that game we got out of the way. Last night, Chiefs Chargers. I guess we should talk about that a little bit. The Magic.
There are only so many ways that I can talk about this this team.
So the game went, with the exception of Justin Herbert getting banged up, and I think Chris Collinsworth said this on the broadcast, this is going exactly the way that the Chargers would have wanted it to.
Yeah, you're right.
Defensive struggle.
Right.
Like, the Chargers were going on long drives, too, where they were possessing the football. They were sacking the hell out of Mahomes. Juwan Taylor was acting a fool, and they still won. The Chiefs did. Which is,
and the thing about the sacks is that that's usually pretty crucial, because it is more often than not that Mahomes does not get sacked. He is like literally the best, I think, by a number of metrics of the last like 5-6 seasons, the best at avoiding sacks, and also avoiding sacks like narrowly.
Right.
He is always like literally a millisecond ahead of the defender tackling him. So to get him on the ground twice, that's like usually a massive competitive advantage against the Chiefs. And because another, incredible notch in Mahomes' belt over, his incredible career so far is how unbelievable he is on third down or fourth down even, especially in clutch situations. If you can't bring him down in those scenarios, you're most likely losing the game.
Yeah.
Because he is just built for okay, it's 3rd and 8 or whatever. There's 2 minutes left and we need to get into field goal range. If you can't bring him down, he's winning the game.
Well,
that's point blank. We have seen it. I mean, we've basically seen it 11 times in a row this season, but we've seen it countless times over the last 5 seasons.
They sacked him 3 times yesterday, but they felt like they were in the backfield every other play.
Right.
I mean, to the point where I think the refs had a few false starts or neutral zone infraction calls on Bosa, but they were successful. They kept them to 19 points. Without Ladd, I think they could have won this game with Ladd McConkey.
No,
Quentin Johnson decided to be a tough SOB all of a sudden and caught the most difficult pass.
Yeah, he was like, you know what? I'm going to prove something. I'm going to get my head ripped off catching this ball.
Herbert, I think really was struggling. If he had been able to run like he's been doing more so, perhaps that would have helped things. But the first half of that game, the Chiefs could not do shit.
Right.
The Chargers could not do shit running the football. If he had been able to break off a few more runs, I felt like perhaps that could have made a difference, but
it seemed like he was definitely in a decent amount of pain.
Yeah.
He was the most, and because I think he himself is just such an athletic freak, he can kind of handle that, Herbert, but I think it's definitely something, as you're saying, when he's actually been, I think, more confident in scrambling himself, to all of a sudden not have that. And not have McConkey there as well was definitely much more difficult, especially when there was really, as you're saying, nothing going on in the backfield for them this game.
Gus Edwards is okay, but it turns out J.K. Dobbins is perfect for Greg Roman's offense, and that's what they like there. So I hope that they can get a little healthier so they can keep on offense. They're starting to get healthy on defense there, but I want the Chargers to be good. It's just they need a little bit more on offense. They need a little bit more receiving help. They probably do need a better, at least complimentary back to J.K. Dobbins, even though Dobbins, you're holding your breath. But
the tough thing is, it's funny is that the Chargers almost have an inverse offensive line problem to the Chiefs. The Chiefs have the issues where the guys on the edges, DJ Humphries is basically their 3rd or 4th replacement at left tackle at this point.
Right.
And then Juwan Taylor, who either is committing 5 false starts or just letting guys completely brush past him, while having arguably the best interior in the league in Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith. For the Chargers, the problem is the other way, is that, they have 2 genuinely really phenomenal tackles in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, but their interior offensive line has been a problem all season. I mean, Zion Johnson has just not really been what they want him to be.
Know.
Trey Pipkins has been pretty inconsistent for them, even though they have given him a lot of runs. So this is
they were hurting in run support because Disley went out too, or was injured. He helps them immensely in the run game.
And so obviously, as we've been saying with the Chargers, they're definitely, it's great to see them as competitive as they are, given how much kind of work seemingly the team needed coming into the season, but it's clear where the limitations are. And Mahomes, obviously, even though so many of these games have been decided on a razor's edge, is obviously just it's luck, but also you can't be that lucky without having someone who is that incredible at what he
No,
does.
it's just clutchness. He's arguably the clutchest quarterback
Like
of all time.
like at some point when you get this much data of doing this, it's kind of hard to just say like, oh, this is a rabbit out of a hat. It might be a rabbit out of a hat, but there's a consistency in that, which is almost more terrifying than thinking this is just a one-off.
Yeah,
He's consistently doing this.
He is. He's
showing us that he in fact can keep getting away with this.
Because he also doesn't care about the statistics of it. Like, he is just making the right play at the right time. They're playing complementary football and playing through their defense. And then when he has to make a play, he does. And that's because he cares about winning more than anything. And that's why he's one of the greatest players of any sport we will ever see in our lifetimes.
It's every like, I don't know. I have not. There is no luster that has left me watching him not being like, as in like I can't, as much as sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they win this game. It's every time I watch him, I'm like, this seems inevitable every single time.
And if they win, if they three-peat this year, what can you even say?
No, there's nothing. Like, this is
this is like greatness to the point where like you should like my like I get goosebumps thinking about how like the level of incredible achievement in the field of competition and athleticism that would mean. Like, and I'm not even a Chiefs fan, but I just do think that we should also recognize greatness. Like, I'm a Brady hater because of the mythology around him, and it's like this like it's the same thing with the Taylor Swift thing where it's like, oh my God, like you're quite clearly manufacturing how incredible you are, and you have an amazing PR team, but like I'm not going to go along with this. Brady's myth making bothers me. But his clutchness and those teams, I never hated the Patriots in the way I should have, because I just couldn't. I respected them too much, and particularly Bill. And like I just feel like if you're a sports fan, I know that some people hate the Chiefs, and there's a lot to hate. I get it, but this is kind of what happens sometimes when you're a dynasty. Sometimes you just got to sit back and appreciate the greatness when you're watching it.
And the other thing too is like if it's hard to really. You can root against, but at some point it's like then also you have to wonder if your Schadenfreude will ever come.
Right.
Because of just how many times they've just no one's been able to actually do any sort of grave dancing because Mahomes is seemingly not killable. So it's a hard thing to do.
Exactly right. And then I guess these other games were a little bit less notable, but we'll run through those quickly. The Bucs did defeat the Raiders. That has implications for the draft because the Raiders still have the first overall pick, so the Giants right now are second. But the Raiders and the Jaguars, I think, play in a few weeks, which could have some implications for the draft. But Aiden O'Connell, it looked like the Raiders could have been competitive. He threw an interception in the red zone, and that was really the end of that attempt at the comeback, honestly. Baker Mayfield is always on his back. He's always looks like he just got shot or something. Like he's got to maybe protect himself a little bit more. It's ridiculous. Also, the Bucs have a horrible defense. Like, is the best defense in the NFC South right now the Carolina Panthers without Derek Brown is the question. Because the Bucs they can't hold anybody. And they're statistically one of the worst defensive units in the league. It shows in the way that they play. And I don't know. There's just something missing for me with the Bucs. Like, maybe it's Canales, and I think Baker's not having as good of a year. I think he's putting himself in worse situations. And Bucky Irving is a bright, shining spot, but they should be, if they're trying to keep the other team off the field, I don't know, playing a bit more ball control. Sometimes feels like they're greedy on offense. I don't know. This is kind of, I have nothing really to say except that I hope the Raiders win one more game.
And it's not as if
two more.
And unfortunately for the Bucs, it's not as if they're getting any healthier on defense either, because it seems like Antoine Winfield is also going to be out.
Right.
So yeah, there's usually I feel like one division who grabs kind of like the every team kind of in one way or the other kind of sucks, and I think this year it's pretty common. Actually, I guess it might be both South divisions of the AFC and NFC, but the NFC South definitely has one of those two spots for sure.
Oh, I mean, it's honestly though that's pretty much every year, right? Like the NFC and the AFC South are largely expansion-y teams.
That's right.
That don't have the biggest fan bases.
Right.
Like, And they are also a little bit mismanaged. Turns out that those owners that got in late and were just there for their value to accrue and accrue and accrue
don't have
don't have the best winning pedigree
and storied relationships to their team.
Although the Bucs have won 2 Super Bowls, so you can't hate. But there are 4 teams. This is my bar trivia who have never been to a Super Bowl. It's the Lions, it's the Browns, and it is the Texans and the Jags. Right. And those are 2 of the expansion teams as well. But the Miami Dolphins defeated the New York Jets in overtime. They covered the 5.5-point spread with a 6-point victory, giving Bradley and I both a validated narrative ? Why don't you go and take this, because it literally went exactly as what we said was going to happen. We said that the Jets will have a good offensive first half and then they will fall apart in the second half and lose, and that's what happened. Except it took an extra quarter.
I was at a bar with my friends watching this game, and I literally everything I was like, DJ Reed and another guy, they stop the Dolphins on 3rd and goal and are like doing like a throw the air ball in the air and hit it with the bat. I'm like, guys, you're gonna give up a touchdown in literally the next play.
Yeah.
And what happens? 4th and goal, pass to Jonnu Smith. They gave up a touchdown, tied the game.
And Jonnu, the king of all kings in like the fantasy world right now, had been completely quiet until overtime. And catches 2 passes, same exact identical play. It's Tua goes to him. They did the same play back to back, where it's basically
it was just on different sides of the field.
A vertical, no, it was the same side of the field. It was on the right side. Because Tua is lefty, so he can just go you'll typically see quarterbacks go to the other side. They drive down the field, and then he I think it was 3rd down that he threw that touchdown pass to Jonnu Smith. Am I crazy? Anyway, long story. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it was close. It was just like they celebrated too early.
Yeah,
like they were like, oh, we stopped them. I'm like, guys, there's another snap here. Like you're gonna lose they're gonna tie the game.
Yeah.
And although Rodgers didn't throw a pick 6, which I was somewhat anticipating.
His first 300-yard game of the year, which
since 2020, the first since
Garrett
2021.
Wilson said good for him or something like dismissive like
so
that.
Happy for him.
So
happy for him.
I love Garrett Wilson, but keep going.
And as soon as we saw that this game was going to go to overtime, I'm like, there's just no universe. There's just no I was as certain that they were not going to win this game in overtime as I was certain that the sun would come up tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And which means as certain as I could possibly be about literally anything on God's green earth. Maybe breathing oxygen in the next second of the statement that I'm making right now. Oh, I did it. That's how certain I was that the Jets were going to lose this game.
It was nice that they let the Dolphins cover too and didn't just have them kick a field goal.
No, that's probably for my purposes. Probably the net benefit of me watching that game is that our pick hit.
Yeah. Garrett Wilson, I'm sure is sick of Rodgers' shit. He gets a good amount of volume. He went for over 100 yards on 7 receptions yesterday. But I think I would imagine he's probably sick of the favoritism that other than him, it appears that Rodgers displays and that he can't get it done in the final part of the game. And
he threw his hands up when he threw his hands up. I'm trying to remember what play that was definitely his fault that he got upset about.
He's pulling the Derek Carr.
Yeah, it was something. I think he dirted a pass that he thought a guy was going to catch because he decided to throw it after a half second after he snapped the ball, and then turnover on downs or 3 and out. And
I hate when guys are veterans like that and they know when the camera's on them, so they know to start blaming the pass catcher. Rodgers is now doing that. I don't think he was that kind of guy for a lot of his career in Green Bay, but this is his mantra now.
I mean, we need that B-roll for the doc, so I guess that's
apparently. I mean, you need to let the audience know because they can't see the receivers going down the field for a route until there's a replay.
Wide open.
They've got to let you know. You've got to tell them that actually it's not my fault. Derek Carr has been a master at this his entire career. Speaking of that guy, he broke his hand yesterday on the stupid play that almost cost the Giants the tank that they needed to do.
I couldn't believe he decided to do that.
I can. I mean, if I were a Saints fan, I would be like, get this guy the fuck off my team right now. Tear this all down. tear it down.
No, it's not working.
But they just got a really meaningless victory against the Giants. So
Right.
thank you for that. This is the version of what the Giants did last year with the Patriots, where they won that meaningless game, and then the Patriots took Drake May, and it's looking pretty good for them right now.
But if Carr is out for a significant amount of time and Jake Haener is starting, I think they lose every game.
His hand is broken. He's done.
Yeah, he's done. So I think that means they lose every game until the season's over.
Okay, well, the Giants, they have basically a 3-game lead on them in the tank at this point. So that's all I'm saying. Because the Giants are 2-11 and they have 4 wins, and then the Giants have the tiebreak. That's all I care about.
No, but saying, do you not want them to lose the next 3 games?
The Giants?
No, the Saints.
I don't care what they do, but
Okay.
I just want the Giants to be ahead of them, and I want the Raiders to win. I want the Giants to have the first overall pick so they can pick who they want, okay? This is what I need. I'm done with this shit. I'm so done watching this offense. I'm done watching
I know,
them have.
It's so disgusting.
It's disgusting.
There's just nothing going on.
Disgusting. Disgusting. And when they were driving down and Drew Lock hit that huge play running up the sideline, I was so mad. And thank God for Brian Bresee, who was the most visible player all throughout the day. Great job, buddy, blocking that field goal.
It's a very impressive athletic feat by him.
Oh.
He's a big boy to hurl over a guy like that.
Brian Bresee, you have kept the dream alive. I appreciate you more than you will ever know. I will always root for you to have good games, unless you're playing the Giants from here on out.
But another fun thing that has been a staple of every Jets broadcast is that type of scene where Rodgers starts pouting or throwing a fit, and then they go straight to the 3 wide open receivers that he chose not to throw to.
Yeah. I mean, it's... I hate the performative shit. I hate it so much. And this seems to be Rodgers' thing. It's been Derek Carr's thing throughout his whole career.
Yeah, no, there was never really a difference, and at least Rodgers has something to show for it.
Yeah, a Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, at least he has one Super Bowl to show
Does Derek
for it.
Carr have one playoff win? One is it's like 0.5 is the over under. I think he has 0.
I'm trying to remember. I don't.
He's 0-1. He's only had one playoff appearance and they lost it.
I see.
All right, so glad he got rewarded with another contract. Anyway, so speaking of quarterbacks that are a little bit performative in a way that's cringy, but it's working out for him right now, Russell Wilson. Come on. All right, we ripped into him for the first 2 years we were doing this show. But we're happy for Russ. See, you can win us over once again with your corniness.
These things, no. This is the vibes. The vibes are good in Pittsburgh right now.
This is
the vibes are immaculate.
This is his exact role. None of the let Russ cook in the way that he wanted, where you're just run the Arthur Smith offense, right. Use the athleticism, your ability to get out and roll out, and do it to perfection. And he has brought back that beautiful deep ball that we were just talking about. I mean, it's not like the Steelers played their best game, I would say. I mean, George Pickens was out, but he was still able to get a touchdown pass to Freiermuth, who's really coming along. And then I forget who else. I think, Van Jefferson, which is so funny that he's kind of buried on the depth chart of that team, but he had 1 catch for a touchdown. The Steelers, it wasn't like their best game because, of course, once again, you get a pair of interceptions from Jameis Winston that sets you up in a really good position. But the Steelers are one of, I think, definitely the 6 best teams in football. And Russell Wilson has been a great compliment for them. And I hope that Mike Tomlin is getting the respect he deserves at this point. He's
now in sort of the Popovich position of he could win Coach of the Year every year.
He should. Or he could.
He could be in his own category of non-Mike Tomlin Coach of the Year award goes to this guy. But it is insane what we thought about what the calculus for this team might be going into the season, and them being not just oh my god, don't look now, or oh that's so surprising. No, literally winning their division most likely comfortably.
No. Mike Tomlin should not be Coach of the Year. Come on. He should be the Democratic nominee for president in 2020.
You're absolutely right.
Has never had a losing season.
Certified winner in
a swing state, blue collar area of the country. Democrats need to reclaim that. Same with the whole ethos of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Can build a broad coalition.
Has been able to deal with the Antonio Brown of the Trump of the NFL, Antonio Brown. I stepped on my own punchline. and
handle adversity from varied opponents,
and like totally great display of positive masculinity, which is desperately needed in a toxic masculinity time under Donald Trump. So there you go. Mike Tomlin.
The only knock is I think I've only heard him speak about 7 to 8 sentences in 20 years, but
I don't care.
We don't need that.
We just need someone that can win, and that's Mike Tomlin, Dan Campbell, 2028.
Yes, I like that. I like the sound of that because Campbell could be the mouthpiece.
Let's go. Yeah, exactly, right. And bringing back positive masculinity to the Democratic Party. Anyway, I don't know. Also, by the way, Michigan swing state.
That's right, exactly. A swing state ticket. I love it.
So congrats to the Steelers. Obviously, I think like they are going to be a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs. It'll be interesting who they match up with. Like, do they match up with the Chargers? Do they match up with the Ravens? Do the Ravens make it? Do they match up with the Broncos? Sean Payton versus Mike Tomlin could be fascinating. Kind of fun, yeah. So lots of good matchups in the AFC that are possible. I think we touched on every game, really, right? Oh, I guess the 49ers and the Bears we haven't discussed. I think if anything, I was wrong. I thought that the Bears would win. Like I thought
this was horrible.
It was horrible.
This was even worse than this was. Yeah, seemingly, I guess the one big takeaway from this season so far is for the most part the dead cat bounce is not working for these teams. It didn't work for the Jets. It didn't work for the. It didn't work for the Bears.
It didn't. It worked for the Saints.
Yeah, I guess it worked for the Saints.
A short period of time. Right. But I thought that that's what was going to happen. And holy crap! Like it was a blink and you miss it. The 49ers were up like 21-0, 28-0.
At some point, I think the total yardage for both teams was like over 300 or something like that for San Francisco. And the Bears had literally 2 offensive yards.
Yeah, it was a joke. And like they couldn't run the ball. No one was catching passes. They were backed up over and over again. And like Caleb Williams didn't throw an interception, but he only threw for 134 yards. Right. Like they just could not get DeAndre Swift going. He only had 38 yards rushing on 14 attempts, which is putrid.
This is a scarred team, unfortunately. This is a team I think that needs the offseason very badly.
And I think also like when you have a young team like this, perhaps the dead cat bounce works a little bit less well, right? Like the Jets also have so many young players on that team, and I think that's how it is in Chicago, where if you don't have a veteran presence, it's really difficult to come back from that. But
because if anything, turnover actually probably affects them in much more of an adverse way.
Yeah.
Like if anything, like more like coaching turnover, more late term adjustment is probably not helpful for a guy like Caleb Williams.
And also the way that this offensive line is performing is just atrocious.
They're horrible.
They're really bad. Horrible. And so the 49ers were able to get home and just
despite missing like 5 guys on defense and Fred Warner basically playing with like a broken hand.
They have to fix this. It's bad for his development, and he still has all of these great tools, but man, it's hard to watch Caleb Williams on the Bears this year.
So tough because at some point I think you just lose. Like I think we saw it with Bryce Young. Like you can lose what your calling cards are when you lose that confidence and also do not have a robust or like complete infrastructure around you.
Yeah.
If you have a crumbling infrastructure around you and you're a rookie quarterback, it's a death knell, proverbially.
Right. It really is. I wonder who takes that job next year. They've got to find someone who's offensively minded.
Yeah, some of these jobs I would not say are particularly appealing in my view.
Oh, we did have one more game. It was the 10-6 victory by the Jaguars.
Oh wow, let's go.
Over the Titans.
Let's go.
This was the worst game ever. Breece Hall not playing meant that in like the playoffs for fantasy are next week, and I was like running with Tony Pollard, who is the only person on offense that seemed to give a shit. And
I think he's like, I think it's like a combo of like Pollard will routinely get like 60 to 80 yards in the game. Then maybe there's like a bomb touchdown to Nick Westbrook-Akine, and then the entire rest of the entire rest of the team just like slowly implodes into the field.
Well, that's what I had I had thought that Nick Westbrook-Akine was going to pop off because he has been, and Will Levis has been loving him. But Levis was just so bad this whole game.
Yeah.
And really bad going into halftime, where then he got injured. And I was convinced, like, thank God they're going to put Mason Rudolph in there and he can at least run an offense. And it's not like they need to get into the end zone. Like, Mason Rudolph can get you to the 20, but he can't get you in the end zone because he's not that. Yeah, but if you run the ball, he can dink and dunk and run an offense. They kept him in. His shoulder was clearly bothering him. And then the one freaking touchdown of the game is Tank Bigsby, and then so the Jaguars win that game. But
big W for Mac Jones.
Huge congrats on putting up all those numbers. Mac Jones was the only quarterback to go over 200 yards. He did have 2 interceptions. Will Levis, 168 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Just a completely awful showing. So there's that. Where do you think Mike Vrabel goes next year?
I'm wondering if I guess it depends on if I think it maybe depends on if the Dallas job is open. If you would maybe do that.
But does he want to deal with that?
Yeah. I think the Jets would be a possibility.
Does he want to deal with that?
But I think the thing is, I have that question about literally every opening.
Yeah.
Like the Bears, I feel similarly. The Saints, I feel similarly.
I mean, the Giants.
If the Raiders get maybe
Giants
the Raiders
are probably going to fire Daboll, I think.
Maybe the Giants wouldn't be the worst option for Vrabel.
I know, but
but with maybe a potential incoming young quarterback, would you want Vrabel as the?
I
shepherd?
want obviously Ben Johnson, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe Joe Shane has sway and can convince Mara, like, your dad didn't fire Tom Coughlin when the media was I don't know. My concern is that the way Neighbors and all these players are talking to the media, it sounds like Dable's lost the locker room. So that's the thing where
Neighbors being like, I didn't
fly that. I mean, we didn't even talk about that. Which
all right, guys, come let's tighten it up a little bit, guys.
Yeah, it's not going great.
Maybe Raiders then I could also potentially see for Vrabel. I don't know.
The Raiders actually have some decent pieces. I mean, Brock Bowers is for real, a superstar.
And maybe if also Vrabel was able to kind of have a good staff around him offensively, they'd probably start over with another QB, and he could probably. I just think he would be good to go to a team that would benefit from like that intensity and sort of that disciplinarian.
Yeah.
Which is sort of why I would honestly wouldn't mind at all if he went to the Jets to kind of like shore up a lot of the discipline issues that the Jets have. But as you're saying, he still would happen to Saleh. I'm not sure if maybe he'd want to go and potentially befall the same fate.
If Ben Johnson doesn't go to the Bears, which I do think that there should be some concern for him about being in the division because they're so familiar with his scheme. Vrabel is a great choice. And I know that they may not want to go with another defensive guy, but like having this leader in the way that Vrabel, like to a veteran who knows how to win, who can tie these young players together.
That's sort of right.
I think it's actually a decent fit in Chicago. And if Vrabel finds somebody that he can trust to run the offense, we can see, perhaps this like you need to be married to this offensive guru thing as a young quarterback is like not always going to be the case because it's too dogmatic to say that.
And with Vrabel and Arthur Smith for a time, like the offense did work. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it wasn't wall to wall amazing. But I'm just saying like there is I think some blueprint that Vrabel has even been a part of where he was the tone setter CEO type guy that also really incorporated the defensive identity and then had a guy running and scheming up and calling the offense. Right.
It is just, but I lost my train of thought, but yeah. So
it'll be interesting to see either A, how many vacancies we have going into the end of the season, and B, where these guys ultimately end up.
Right.
And if Bill Belichick, I guess,
I don't think
goes to UNC question mark.
Yeah, I think he should just. I know he still wants to coach. I don't know about it though, man. Like. He's great on the Manning cast. I love him I like him.
He's having fun. I also feel like potentially maybe the coaching template he embodies is maybe not as in vogue as.
It's totally not, but
Yeah.
the problem is that like he definitely wants his name out there. So if the
course.
Giants go with Bill, I don't even know how I'll react. I don't know. I mean, it's always been his dream to coach the Giants.
Right.
So that's the part that gets me a little freaked out. Just because I just think, and I don't want to deal with him with, like, what are you doing, Bill? Stop dating a girl who is...
There's a lot of...
It's disgusting.
There's a lot of straight... He's like 73 years old. I think there's a number of things he could stop doing, i.e. like...
Posing for, like, couples Halloween pics
like,
with your 24-year-old girlfriend?
Your daughters are probably older. Your son, who is like a coordinator, is older than your girlfriend.
It's really, really gross.
Yeah, it's
like,
just like
I'm
for
not
those
judgy.
For those reasons, I'm out.
But yeah, I'm not.
No,
like,
listen, love it. You know,
if she was 32, it would be a little bit more palatable.
There's just something a little, you know.
Like she just graduated from college.
That's sort of my. I think about. That's when you are young. That seems quite old, but when you are 22, you're a child.
Yeah.
Like you're still quite young. And I'm 28, and I'm saying that. And that was 6 years ago for me. And I'm still
Well, she's 24, so let's not lock him up. But
even 24, I'm like 4 years ago. I still think I'm like a different person than I was then.
yes.
And he's probably been 9 different people because he's literally 50 years older than she is.
Whew. Bradley,
Yes.
before we leave, Juan Soto.
Oh my God.
Getting more money than Shohei Ohtani.
I can't
Makes
believe.
no sense.
I can't believe that burner account was correct.
Not my money.
Did you see that?
No.
This burner account was like came up out of nowhere and was on Twitter was like, I have to say this under cover of a burner because I'm not authorized to release this info. The Mets are coming to terms of a deal for 15 years, 745 million. Everyone in the mentions was like, "Ha, shut up, dude! Like you're an idiot! Like that's obviously not happening."
Yeah.
Like gonna flag this for old takes exposed. Literally 2 days later, he's 20 million off the final number.
It's amazing. I mean,
Like he actually had it nearly. He had 15 years, just 20 million off the number that Jeff Passan reported. But listen, as you said, not my money. Like I would much rather.
like if you were to say resource allocation, like he's not a pitcher, right? This is the kind of money that would go towards normally somebody that can hit and pitch, but he is a playoff performer, and that's what the Mets really want, and a playoff hitter.
And he won a World Series with Washington when he was very young. He got the Yankees back to the World Series for the first time in 15 years. I just think he has both on and off the field like a very kind of like contagious competitive spirit while also being one of the most like dynamic hitters, but also one of the guys with some of the most incredible plate discipline I've ever seen out of a guy. He's a really, really talented hitter in so many different ways. And frankly, I'd rather Steve Cohen like not be insider trading and spending his money on getting the guy who hits the ball really far with that money.
Again,
so, like,
not my money. Who cares? This is not like a cap.
No, for me it's monopoly
cap league.
money. For me it's the money that was found in that guy's backpack.
Yeah, right.
Fake.
Fake. Who cares? Yeah. See you next year, Steve.
Yeah. So I'm pretty pumped because I think Soto and Lindor together. I mean, I guess obviously this is a huge allocation, so I do wonder if this does ultimately just mean that Pete Alonso is gone.
Most likely.
Which is like sad to me just because I love him and he really, despite this really looking like he was just going to be a kind of like weak / anticlimactic swan song to his time on the Mets, he really gave us so many iconic moments in this postseason.
I mean, that grand slam.
Yeah, it's like I'll remember that forever. But like, this is a lot to add, so I feel like there are going to be many teams I'm sure can outprice the Mets on Alonso.
Yeah, I mean, it always felt like, honestly, with him walking the free agency before the year where it didn't seem like they were getting much done, like this was a real possibility, especially with the way that the Mets season was going to start the year before they had that miraculous run. So like, and he didn't have the best year himself until really the postseason,
which he really kind of came on. Yeah.
So I could see him going elsewhere as well.
My hope is, though, at the very least, that they got Clay Holmes, which I think was a good pitching addition, but I hope they still kind of look to get more pitching depth because outside of The lineup now, especially, I'm like pretty comfortable with. I just think they really want to not go out with this kind of basically the same pitching rotation.
I agree with that.
That they had.
That was the weakness that they had.
They've
so
always sort of kind of kept them in close games when they could have just sort of shut the door on some of them.
Right, exactly right. Read some IMs and get out of here. Shawis, Bill Belichick's girlfriend, was 2 years old when he won his first Super Bowl as a head coach of the Rams. That's so heartwarming. Against the Rams, sorry.
I don't like knowing that.
Tater Tot, everyone on the Mets bandwagon or next year? They stole Soto from the Yankees. I know. I'm a little worried about the vibes of Nets. The Nets vibes a little bit about like getting Durant and Kyrie Irving.
Oh.
I saw some Yankees fans that I follow who like are also, of course, like, you know, New York or maybe Rangers or Giants writers or whatever, making that case. And of course they're going to make that case, but that part does concern me a little bit. NYC driver, Jets, Mets, Knicks, Rangers fan here. If the Jets had won just half of these one-score games, we would be in contention. They find new ways to twist the knife every week. The Jets beat the Bills and go 4-13 to end this miserable season. At least Juan Soto made up for the Jets and Rangers yesterday. Yes, exactly. The Rangers are also having a really miserable season, but hopefully starting to get better, even though they did completely collapse against the Kraken yesterday. Losing the Jacob Trouba dead weight and being able to extend Igor Shesterkin was massive. And congrats to Shesterkin, who just had his second baby and will be starting tonight regardless. What a king. NYC driver, Brady is like the Federer, Nadal in tennis. Mahomes is Djokovic. Just when you think you've seen the GOAT, a better GOAT comes along. That's a fair assessment. Although as someone who grew up loving Roger Federer, comparing him to Tom Brady does put a little twang in my heart. But Casey Answer, I feel so vindicated the Vikings improved without Cousins as he is so overrated and has been for so long. Plus the Vikings rush attack with Aaron Jones makes them so much more balanced. It's crazy. I don't see how they let Darnold out the door. Yeah, I mean, I hear that, but I do think Darnold is, like, I don't know if they have the cap space to give him a contract where he could probably get a lot more money and also be guaranteed to be the starter. Does he want to have the J.J. McCarthy stuff hanging over his head? I'm not sure. Mr. Sex Grill says, Emma, as a proprietor of the Only 30 Rock Majority Report meme page, thank you for constantly providing content. Wait, Mr. Sex Girl, I need this meme page link. Relevant quote, Jenna as the green giant in front of a green screen. I'm just hair and eyes. It's perfect. Oh, I love her. Will from Indiana. I'm 23 and this conversation is offensive to me. Kidding. But yeah, Belichick is gross. Also, okay, we're not was actually saying she's a child. So don't feel badly if you're watching porn and there are people who are like, maybe I shouldn't say that word. Whatever.
No, I'm saying metaphorically from like in terms of like adult development,
as related to him, like
as related to a 73-year-old man. Yes,
you're okay if you're watching a video and the girl's younger and like that, or not underage, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm not trying to say it's perverted. I'm just saying in terms of relationship and the power differential in like a human connection.
Yeah, both in terms of life experience, money.
Yes,
professional stature, like all of those things.
Yes.
It's not just because the person is 22 and he's 73. It's all the other trappings of that context.
Exactly. Will from Indiana, sorry you kept going. Yeah, Belichick is gross. Also, I'm going to be a nervous wreck for Indiana facing Notre Dame to open the CFP on the 20th, but I'm just happy that they got in to begin with. We will see. Left is ESVN. Yeah, we completely forgot to even talk about this, but this system is a little weird. Like, I'm excited for the college football playoff. I'm glad that it's finally bracketed and like we have a real, more competitive, traditional tournament.
But it doesn't.
Boise State.
It's just sort of. I feel like it's just still sort of they're working out the kinks of like how to actually sort of determine who like the 12 best teams are. Yeah,
and I guess seeding just matters so much less too than it would in maybe like I don't know, a different context. But I guess now we have the official bracket, right? So you have Oregon first, which is, I don't know, them facing OSU or Texas. Like, I'd be really worried if I were Oregon. I think that's what the bracket is. It's going to be Ohio. No, Tennessee. Sorry, Texas is below it. Texas is playing Clemson. Right. Okay. Gotcha. Either way, Tennessee's not been bad this year.
No, I think Oregon still, they were pretty convincing in the win against Penn State, but I think there are a few close matchups. Like I think Notre Dame, Indiana, as Will mentioned, Notre Dame, Indiana will be a close one.
Totally.
But yeah, I think it's exciting, but I'm curious to see how the games actually go and if people are like, wait, what is happening?
Me too.
Like, if there are a number of upsets, is it just going to be strange if it's like all of a sudden like Arizona State and SMU are like in the final?
Right.
But I don't know. We'll see.
So basically, the 5 through 8 seeds get to host a playoff game. So Ohio State is hosting Tennessee, Texas is hosting Clemson, Penn State is hosting SMU, and then Notre Dame is hosting Indiana, which, as you're saying, is going to be like a great rivalry game in state. So then they move on to basically the semifinals against Oregon, Arizona State, Boise State, or Georgia. It's crazy. The right team could get hot. Like Ohio State's 2 losses, I think, may have put them in a situation where if they do end up beating Tennessee and they beat Oregon, like I could see that as being the upset because the Michigan loss was one of them. And then who else did Ohio State lose to this year for their second loss? I'm blanking on it. But I remember it being a little bit more dismissible. But perhaps I'm misremembering.
Yeah, hold on one second. I'll find it.
Like they beat Penn State this year. We'll find it. But either way, I agree with you. We'll see how it works out. All right, guys, and the final I am of the day.
It was Oregon other than Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting rematch then. The final I am of the day. The Nebraska Kowalski from Nebraska. The Nebraska Cornhuskers are coming to the Big Apple for their first bowl game in like 8 damn years, and I couldn't convince any of my friends to go with me. I apparently need wealthier friends who aren't having children. That sucks. Well, Kowalski, if you're in town, give us a ring. All right, folks. We're going to wrap up now. Really appreciate all your viewers, your nice comments, your IMs. We will see you on Thursday for our locks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.